Welcome back to Magic Hour Podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Taylor Page.
And I'm Claire. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
So excited to share this episode with Angie today. It was so great. And I just am such a fan of yoga. And even if you're thinking of yoga in like a core power way, we're talking in this episode about yoga as a path to becoming the witness of yourself again, deepening your intuition, staying connected to being a soul in a physical body in this earth. And there's so many nuggets of wisdom in this episode. I'm really excited to get into it.
I love that. I also love yoga. And when I started yoga, I had no idea what it was really going to do for me. I'd heard it was good, and I'm a very flexible person. So I was like, great, that's for me. And I feel like sometimes that can stop people from doing yoga because they're like, oh, I'm not flexible. I think for a lot of men, it can be like scary to do it because they're like, I can't really do that. But to me, it's about connecting your head and your body. Like, basically, that's the whole thing for me. And I couldn't believe how unconnected I was until I started doing yoga and then realized how profound connecting those two things were and how profound of an experience using the breath to connect those two things are. I mean, it truly transformed me in my life and informs the way that I show up all the time. Like I'll never be the person I was before I started doing yoga.
Yes, here. And to your point, it has nothing to do with athleticism or flexibility and everything to do to see how we react in uncomfortable positions. Everything about how we can either breathe our way through, be kind to ourselves, get connected to our body. And it's such a metaphor for life off of the mat, too. And so yoga is like the perfect thing that is created to get us in uncomfortable positions. And what do we do with that? It's interesting too, just a little anecdote. I used to go to this yoga studio in Studio City where I used to live, and it's really sad because it closed down during COVID, but it was called Electric Soul Yoga, and it was so freaking awesome. The teacher was so insane. He would purposely walk around and say mean things to us as part of our yoga practice to be like, can we breathe through it? Can we smile? Can we tune out external things? Can we get through the heat and the discomfort? Like, not super mean in an abusive way, but he would be hard on us or annoying. Like, he'd purposely try to be annoying, like smack around with his little flip flops, or I don't know, he'd just do annoying things or keep talking when we were trying to focus because it was part of the practice of yoga in his mind. But I kind of liked it in a sick way. I was like, this is really cool, like yoga on hard mode. But one of those days that I was at that studio, I was going like 3 to 4 times a week. I was going through a really bad breakup. And at the time, I was like so upset because I've talked about this on the podcast before. I was like, how could this happen? All of the signs were pointing that this was a soulmate connection for me. And how could I be so wrong? And one of the days I was parking at the yoga studio and it was Valentine's Day. And I was so pissed. I was like, it's Valentine's Day and I'm going through this breakup. And I was like, I'm going to wear all black on Valentine's Day. I was just being really intense about it and just being like my little early 20s Scorpio self. And there was a sign, like a billboard outside of my yoga studio that was like, could not have been a bigger sign right in front of my face with bright red letters that said, is your heart really broken or your ego? And I was like, ooh, snap. That was like exactly the message that I needed to hear, because I think in my heart, I knew that that person and I weren't really a sustainable match for the long run, but my ego was so hurt by that breakup. And my ego was so hurt at the idea that my intuition might have been wrong, which now as a more developed practitioner, I know it was never my intuition that was wrong. It was the stories I was telling myself over my intuition. That was so powerful. And I feel like yoga is so ripe for our angels and guides to work through and get us messages. And so much intuitive information comes through when you're in that open, surrendered place that's fueled by our breath.
That's such a funny story. I love that you saw that. It's like, wow, called out by both the yoga teacher and the sign outside of the yoga studio. I love imagining him just trolling you guys in the class to get you to be even more mindful and focused.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, I think yoga is about mindfulness. And mindfulness is also such a connection for us with our angels and guides. If we're not mindfully in our life, we're going to miss all of the signs. We're going to miss the synchronicities. We're going to miss the nudges because we're going to be trapped in here telling us a story, like you said about your ex, and how many of us have done that. We want the person to be the person because we're ready for our person to show up. And so we disregard all the red flags and lift up all the things that are good and say, yeah, see, this has got to be it because I want it to be it, versus being really honest with ourselves about, yeah, this might have some pieces of it, but I know deep in my heart that if I'm really thinking about my true match or someone that I would actually want to live this life with, there's probably some things here that aren't right. And that deep honesty, I think, comes in mindfulness. It comes in our connection with ourself. And yoga is just such a portal for that. And that's why it's lasted for as long as it has, because it's deep.
Yeah, it's like yoga, astrology, all of these ancient things are never going away because they work and they're powerful, and we find a lot of meaning and benefits in them. And yeah, I think yoga single handedly was one of the biggest contributors to my spiritual awakening. So if you're seeing this episode and you're like, yoga, I don't know, isn't that just like a workout? No, it is so much more. And I'm so excited to share this conversation that I had with Angie. Angie Tiwari is globally recognized as an industry leader in wellness, the founder of Unearthed Retreats, yoga teacher trainings, and online yoga studio. She coaches yoga teachers and works with corporates and brands, educating on well-being and high performance. She seeks to break down false and harmful narratives in the wellness industry with a mission to reshape it. Her vision is for more diversity, inclusion, and accessibility and South Asian representation within yoga and beyond. She has worked with Fortune 500 companies, sharing holistic leadership techniques and accessible rituals backed by science to increase emotional intelligence, reduce burnout and imposter syndrome, and elevate company culture. Welcome, welcome, Angie. Angie, welcome to Magic Hour. So excited to have you here today.
So excited to be here from London to LA. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and I love London so much. I've been there like aggregate 6 weeks in the last 3 years. So I've been to London a lot in the past few years, and I'm so obsessed with the UK. So it's extra exciting to hear your accent.
I love your accent. Whenever you're next in London, you've got to let me know. We can meet up.
I would absolutely love that. So, we always start the podcast by asking our guests what their astrology big three are, but I know you told me that you didn't know your moon and rising, and that's totally fine. So, why don't you just tell our hummingbird community your sun sign?
Sagittarius, and I feel really aligned with that. The fire sign, I feel like I have a lot of that drive and that fire, and also the love of exploring and being an adventurer. And you also told me that that really connects with yoga as well.
Yes. So Sagittarius as a fire sign is connected to movement. Like all the fire signs have a certain degree of athleticism, movement, fire. And then Sagittarius is wisdom, esoteric system of knowledge, philosophy, religion. So it's literally like moving through wisdom. And that's why it rules yoga because it's a fusion. Yoga is that spiritual movement. And so it's such a beautiful expression of that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I didn't know that. So I've learned something new already.
Yes. And so the second question that we like to ask everybody is how does your intuition speak to you?
I think that it's been a journey over the years because there were times where I didn't feel like I really had an intuition through moments in my life where I think I was living in a very detached kind of lifestyle. And as I've come back to myself and come back home within my own self, it's almost as if that intuition has got louder. Now, I know that's not the case. I know because I had moments in my childhood where I really felt I had a strong intuition. And then I've kind of come back to it in my adulthood. But there were definitely moments where I didn't think it existed. I clearly was not listening to it. I clearly wasn't allowing space for it to speak to me. And now I feel really in tune with it. And how I hear it, I personally hear an inner voice that I know is a deeper inner wisdom. And it comes to me specifically when I'm in a deeper state of my practice, be it moving through yoga flow in the movement, or be it in a deep state of meditation, which maybe I've got through chanting mantras or doing different pranayam, different breathing techniques. When I'm in my practice, I hear it a lot clearer and I feel like I've got more clarity. I also try and check in with it in the everyday when I am a little bit more detached. And I just try and listen a bit more, because I think sometimes we like to take over with, well, there's nothing to prove it. But deep down, we do have this yes or no, this gut feeling. So I try and call upon it, because I know sometimes there are times where it's really loud. And I know that there are other times where it's a little bit quieter and I need to invite it in and call it in. So it shows up in different ways, to be honest, because it depends on what state energetically I'm in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's so synchronistic. I feel like every guest I've asked this question to, there's a synchronistic expression of intuition with their field of expertise. And you were saying that you felt so detached and we're kind of living in this detached way. And I feel like yoga is something that forces us to be embodied and reconnected with our heart and our breath and our soul. And so I think it's so beautiful that as you maybe came back to your practice or felt reconnected or embodied, that intuitive dial turned back up for you, or you just weren't floating away from it through like escapism or numbing or avoiding or whatever that detachment looked like for you.
A lot of that kind of stuff, absolutely. And I also, when I get into a deeper state of this only really happens when I'm in a deep state of meditation, but I always see an eye, and I can't explain it in any other way as it's just a really wise looking eye. I know that sounds really bizarre to people listening, but it just looks like the eye of an old person, and it just feels so wise. And it's really difficult to explain because it's like the perfect drawing. It's as if someone's drawn the perfect eye, but the eye is alive and the eye is blinking as some of these messages are coming to me. So that's something that when I see that eye, I know that I've gone deep in a different state. And we speak about the third eye in yoga philosophy as well. I don't know if that's what it is, or if it's, I don't know what it is, but it feels like a lot of clarity and it feels intuitive to me whenever that comes up for me too.
That's amazing. In my personal readings, whenever I see an eye like that around somebody, which it's not as fleshed out as what you're describing, but it's just the symbol of an eye, not like an alive eye blinking. I think that's so cool. And by the way, nobody in this community thinks that's weird. We are all very open to that kind of stuff. But yeah, whenever I see that, it's my sign for somebody that has their own intuitive abilities and gifts and ways that they're being called to maybe develop or go further into them. So I think that that's really cool. So I want to go into yoga now. And I'm so excited to have you here today because I feel like in the US, yoga has strayed so far from its roots and intention. And I immediately clicked with your content when I found you. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to the origins of yoga and what your work with decolonizing yoga looks like.
Absolutely. So the origins of yoga, centuries and centuries old practice. Most of the poses way back when were, firstly, there were not many of them at all. And secondly, they were seated poses. So there's actually only 2 seated poses that are mentioned in all 4 of the major ancient yogic texts. And they are cross-legged poses. So one of them is Padmasana, which is known as lotus pose, where you've got your heels kind of crossed over and you're sat in an upright position. And the other one's called Siddhasana, which means perfect pose, or one who has perfected a skill. And that is, again, cross-legged, but the knees are a little bit more wider out. And so just from that alone, you can tell how far yoga has strayed, as you've said, because we all see it as being a predominantly movement-based practice made up of lots and lots of different poses. And actually, the yoga poses is such a small element of the practice of yoga. So really, it's a philosophy and it's a way of living. Where in today's world, we say we've gone to yoga, we've done yoga, but actually it's something that you become. It's a way of you being. And that comes up in lots of different ways. There's lots of different channels of philosophy. But thinking about getting to a place of moksha, which means liberation. And how do we do that? We first have to become aware of what's going on in our mind. So it's that deeper level of awareness that takes us to a place of being able to observe what's actually happening in our mind. That means that we can then overcome our thought patterns, change our habits, literally rewire our brain and then get to a place where we feel much more in a freer state, in a state of enlightenment, which is known as samadhi, in a state of self-awareness to this higher self-realization. But on and kind of explaining it in English, you genuinely become a nicer person, a better person to be around, a better person up here. You get your mind on your side, and therefore the whole world changes because everything is down to perspective and perception. And number one thing I don't think we do much in the Western yoga world is actually allow people to feel the toxicness of our minds and the darkness of our minds. In the yoga practice today in the West, it's very much, this is something to feel relaxed, this is something to calm down, this is something to get more flexible and mobile. And while the practice of yoga can absolutely bring you all of those things, what happens is when someone notices that feeling of envy, that feeling of judgment of themselves, they think they're not doing it right and they just push it back down. And actually, yoga will bring up all of this dirt that's in the mind. And you've got the ability to recognize that, acknowledge it, honor it, because it is part of you. And know that it's not the full you. It doesn't define you. It doesn't mean you're an evil person. But if we don't overcome it, we can't get to more clarity within our lives. And so the work that I do in decolonizing yoga is I share movement practice. I love movement. I absolutely love having a pose to work towards. I love the strength I feel in my body. I love how mobile and therefore healthy it's made me in terms of being able to bend down and stand up and not use my hands. Things like that's important work. But I think what it's given me is, what it's taught me really is the ability to be kinder, be more compassionate, all of these different philosophical concepts, and to treat everyone the same. There's a beautiful saying that's Vasudev Kutambakam, which means the world is one family. And we don't do that. We don't see each other as, we're so interconnected, not just with people, but with nature. And so my work is trying to, yes, teach you movement, but take you deeper so you can deepen your understanding of what the practice of yoga is. And I do that through sharing the philosophy like I've done already, little snippets of it in bite-sized chunks in ways that people can understand it. Because actually, even though it's very ancient, it's incredibly applicable to modern day life. So sharing that, and then sharing things you don't often see, different mudras, different hand gestures, chanting of particular mantras. These are things my grandparents taught me, my parents taught me growing up in an Indian Hindu household. So that's the work in decolonizing yoga. And now I also run yoga retreats, yoga teacher trainings to help teachers learn how to do the work that I do so that we can get everyone benefiting from actually what yoga is all about.
That's so amazing. And I just feel like it's exactly what we need right now. We live in such I always say, like an air element dominant world where it's just constant information, constant stimulation, constant ideas, constant thought. And in my readings as an intuitive, I see similar patterns every single day, which is you aren't feeling your feelings. You're completely up here in this crown chakra block of overthinking, second guessing, going like rationalizing. And I feel like yoga brings us back and forces us back into our body in some ways. And there's also this other pattern I see, which is people don't breathe. We're like forgetting to breathe. We're holding our breath. And yoga is just so powerful for remembering that we are spiritual beings, but in a physical body. And I feel like some spiritual modalities are either too far one way or the other. And so I love how yoga is this perfect practice for those of us that want to balance being human and divine.
There's another really beautiful saying, which is mana eva manusyanam. And it means as the mind, so the person. And that is just spot on. If you're a judgmental, closed off in up here, that's the person you are. If you're more open, you're warm, you're loving within your own mind to yourself, that's the person you become. And so you literally can change your personality off the back of these practices. But I understand to the beginner and to the everyday skeptic that it feels so far removed. Like, how can doing yoga make you change your brain and change your thought patterns and change your mindset and make you get promotions at work because you literally acting differently? That's what things that have happened to people that come on retreats with me. It's all in your control. Like, no one else is going to do this stuff for you. And so it's just taking some of that back, because I think, you know, in your work as well, people have given so much to authority figures and they've just lost that ability within themselves to make the changes that they know that they need to make. It's incredible, the changes that can happen.
That's so, so powerful. And I witnessed it personally. I took my first yoga class at 17. Yoga has been there for me through the most difficult parts of my life. Like, I call it wringing out the sponge, because sometimes you just get so full of emotions and turmoil and intensity. And yoga is where I go. I cry every single yoga class, no matter what. Even if I'm in like a happy period of my life, like I am bawling in Shavasana every single time. But I noticed my personality change through my practice. I went through such a bad breakup around 25, 26. I kind of lost my way from my yoga practice for a while, and I dove back in and I became super devoted, and I was going like 3 or 4 times a week. And that like completely shifted everything. And I remember when I was at the airport one time, I was in this long line and the flight was delayed. And this was post yoga. And it goes back to your point too. You don't just do yoga. It's a practice. It's a lifestyle on the mat and off the mat. And off the mat is sometimes where we have to do the most yoga. And so I was in this airport. It was so stressful. And I just remember in the past, my nervous system would have been dysregulated. I would have been upset. I would have been crying about my plane. But instead, I was just connected to my breath, just like I would be on the mat, as these poses that challenge me on the mat are a metaphor for these moments in life that push us outside of the mat. And so that to me was the moment I noticed like this practice of breathing through the discomfort, first of all, is so applicable to the world we live in today, is such a necessary toolbox. And it's such a gift that I'm so grateful for. And that moment made me really realize like this breathing through the discomfort, staying regulated in my nervous system, that's one of the biggest gifts that I've gotten from yoga personally.
It's the ability to reframe the way that you think. That is so powerful, like you said. And every time you're in a yoga posture, often, especially if it's a challenging one, people will hold their breath. And that is exactly what happens when that person experiences a stressful situation that challenges them outside. It's such a mirror. So firstly, if you learn to breathe within a challenging pose, you are going to hold the pose for longer. You're going to feel more comfortable. You're going to be able to do it. And so similarly, when you get that work email from your boss that says, hey, can we chat in 5 minutes? You then learn, okay, I can breathe through this, instead of holding your breath and kind of completely dysregulating yourself and stressing yourself out. So I completely agree with you. The most transformative moments for me have been the situations where I've been like, oh, this is so interesting, because I would have looked at this differently. And I'm able to unpack a situation live in my mind, rather than being like, I used to be so incredibly reactive. And now I can kind of be aware of the reaction I want to have, or that I would have had, or the emotion I'm feeling, and then analyze it internally and think, that's so interesting that I'm feeling this way, because actually I can have that kind of almost like a mini therapist session within myself, which saves me from reacting to a loved one or to anyone in the way that maybe wouldn't be the most well thought out. And I can process it. And the hardest things is when you notice these, what we label ugly emotions, come up. Because if you don't notice them, the ugly emotions just continue to live within you. And every single time you see that person's face, they've done something that annoyed you, you're going to feel that emotion, and feel that emotion. When we feel an emotion like an anger, a jealousy, an envy, it creates heat in the body, creates inflammation in the body. Inflammation leads to disease. So you think this over a period of a lifetime creates serious illness within ourselves. So if you can actually face on the horrible emotions, the ones you don't want to face, you don't even want to admit that you feel them, embrace that darkness, analyze it, observe it, journal on it, feel it, smash a pillow with your hands, let the anger out, or whatever the emotion is, you are then dealing with it. And you're then going to not react in that way in the future. So absolutely, the hardest work starts when we leave the class. The work starts when we leave retreat, from being in that little cozy bubble of doing yoga where everything's pretty peaceful, and maybe you just hear lovely music and the teacher's speaking in a soft voice and everyone's there united for that purpose. Well, guess what? Life is not like that. So that is the easiest place to do yoga, because you're in the right environment for it. And the work starts when you leave the room, And then you realize, okay, well, not everyone else is like on this same journey as me. You can't change anyone else. You can just change your response to these people and everyone that you meet in life, and try and be the best version of you that you can be.
Yes, absolutely. I love that so much. And I am just loving this conversation. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to go practice yoga right now.
I feel the same.
As you were speaking, it just brought me to this idea that's so powerful, is that yoga empowers us to be the witness, not the believer or the person getting dragged on this wild ride. And again, through these kind of intense collective times that we're living through on earth, there's no better gift to give yourself than coming into the observer space instead of, again, being dragged on this wild ride. It's like, I always, and I say this too about like astrology knowledge or other empowering tools, it's like it doesn't absolve us of being human, but it gives us a life raft, whereas people without the life raft might be going up and down under the waves in a more unconscious way. The life raft allows us to be on the top, still going up and down on the waves, but as the observer. And I just think that it's so interesting what you were talking about with the dark and ugly emotions, because we run from these things, but in reality, every single person has these dark, ugly emotions. They are not the truth of who we are. They are messengers showing us opportunities for deeper healing. And yoga opens them up in this crazy, intense way where you're on the mat, there's no distractions, you're just connected to your breath. I try to keep my eyes closed the entire time. I absolutely detest yoga studios with mirrors. I'm like, I will not go. Like, I just want to just be in my own body. And, then you start to observe. Where are you comparing yourself to other people's practice? Where are you putting pressure on yourself to do something a certain way? Where are mean negative thoughts coming up? Where are you worried about where the class is going, what time it is, what the next pose is going to be? Just starting to use this microcosm of a safe, controlled environment to observe our thought patterns, our inner villain voice, our unkind words, and those ugly emotions like you were talking about, that are in every single area of our life, because how we do one thing is how we do everything. And so don't judge yourself for those things coming up. Actually applaud yourself for observing them, because that is one of the biggest gifts you can give to yourself. And I think shame is like such a killer. Like, we just try to avoid shame at all costs, or feeling shame. But if you fall on your mat or you fall out of a pose, it's like, it's such a beautiful, safe cocoon to just feel all of those emotions and breathe through them and realize they pass, just like the discomfort of the pose.
Exactly. And I think that if you are having the awareness of the ugly emotions, or if they are coming up, you're doing the practice of yoga correctly, because that's exactly what's supposed to happen. So that's one of the reasons why I talk about decolonizing yoga. People don't quite understand what that means, but it's really just believing that yoga is what it is. If you believe that yoga is what it is, that we see it as, the way that it's been marketed, you're missing out on a great deal of opportunity to heal. And so if you know that, okay, I'm not always going to feel calm and relaxed, and actually some of these ugly emotions are going to come up, and actually maybe I'm going to cry and I'm going to feel really sad, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It actually means you're doing it correctly. And I think we would have a world of healed human beings if we knew that in order to heal, it's first pretty horrible. It's pretty ugly. It's pretty painful. It kind of feels like everything in your body is telling you, no, 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 no. You don't want to feel those emotions. You don't want to admit. But then it does become easier. But that first feeling and that horrible sensation that you get when you first have those realizations of those emotions, like you said, those mean thoughts, you're looking at the person next to you on the yoga mat and they can do the pose and you can't, then you start bitching about them in your mind. And like, you don't even know them. And actually, for all you know, they might be a yoga teacher. So they might have years and years of practice of doing that pose and teaching that pose or whatever it is. It might be your first time. Why are you bitching about them? And I think just being aware of that and almost allowing yourself to be like, that's so funny. Why am I bitching about her? She's done nothing wrong. And you can have this internal conversation in your mind. That is all the practice, as much as it is doing the different poses on your mat and using your breath and using whatever else it is that you require. But absolutely, it's just that we're scared to deal face on with what's happening internally. And in yoga, we have a concept of the 5 kosha, the pancha koshas, which means the 5 sheets or the 5 bodies. And it's the outer layer, which is the physical layer, Annamaya Kosha. And that's what we really associate ourselves with. But the yoga perspective is acknowledge that you're not just made up of your physical. This is just a vessel for the human experience that the soul is currently experiencing. So then you have your pranamaya kosha, which is the layer of the prana, which is known as the breath or the vital life force. So you can channel your breath through the body to also make changes in emotional shifts. And then you have manomaya kosha. Manomaya kosha is the mental layer, so the mind sheath. So the importance of the mind. You think now in today's culture, we talk about mental health. Only now, centuries and centuries ago, they already said that was the third layer. Then you have the Jnanmaya Kosha, which is the layer of the intuition and the inner voice and the inner wisdom. And then finally, it's known as the bliss sheath, the bliss layer. It's Anandamaya Kosha. So it's like this highest state that you can't really explain, but it's just to be experienced and a connection with something that's more divine. It's really similar to the connection with the crown Sahasrara chakra, the crown energy center. But those are the 5 bodies that make us up. So we're made up of that, not just the physical body. And when you apply that to your yoga practice, then you can realize, okay, it's not just about the way that I look on the mat. And it doesn't matter if I wobble. Some days you'll wobble and fall, and other days you'll be perfectly straight. And it doesn't mean anything, but we assign meaning to it. And we either say we're good at yoga or we're bad at yoga. But actually, you're just practicing yoga. It's all a practice.
Yes, I love that. You could, and I've done this before where I just halfway through class lay in Shavasana for the rest of the time. And that's still practicing yoga and honoring what my body needed that day. And it's so beautiful because earlier on in my practice, it would have been inconceivable of me to do that. And I would be judging myself the whole time and I'd be wondering what people would think of me. And now I just don't care. I let out the loudest, like sigh exhales. I just lay on my mat. Like it's so freeing. But I love what you just said about the different layers of existence. And I love how the intuitive layer is under like the mental layer. It's like the deeper layer within that, because it's so true. Because in this podcast, it's so much about intuitive development and people on a spiritual journey. But without confronting the shadows of the mind, the crunchiness of the mind, it's really hard to get to the intuitive layer because we're so attached to outcomes. Like you said, we're assigning meanings to things instead of just letting things come through and taking exactly what we get. And so I really do think yoga, by helping us unravel those negative self-talk patterns, these thoughts, this mental chatter, by not running from it, but just becoming the observer of it and breathing through it, it's all a messenger to us for what we need to see. And when we get the message, the messenger can stop. And so when it unravels to a certain degree, then there's nothing left but a clear pathway for our intuition to come up. And I think yoga is a beautiful practice for intuitive development because it's such a concentrated container for removing all the blocks to hearing that voice.
Absolutely. And that's why I feel that my work so focuses on trying to get people to understand that there's more than just what meets the eye and more than just what people tend to think about what the practice of yoga actually is. And when you deepen your understanding, then all these doors start opening up and you start having all these realizations and revelations, and you wish you could go back, but you can't. You've just got to change today. You know, all we do have is today. So I think it really opens it up for people. And even if you come through the door of movement and that's what you go to regularly, it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just try and take it a little bit deeper. Like you said, be observant of what's coming up in your mind when you're on the mat. But still, challenging yourself through movement is incredible for ourselves. And if you really are devoted, you'll see it as a moving prayer as you move through your mat. Give yourself the permission and the ability to honor yourself. I think it takes time to do that because we do feel a little bit awkward if we're not used to yoga. Oh, can I just do what I want to do? Or do I have to, you have to follow authority the whole time, don't we? Because it's what we've done our entire lives. But I love what you said, that you really allow your voice to be heard, really allow yourself to let everything out. And you also do whatever pose you want to do. And I'm the same as you, but it has taken me years to do that. And there are still sometimes moments where I think, I know I can do the pose. And I think, I don't want to do the pose today. And then in my mind, it's saying, why do I feel like I need to do the pose just to show everyone else I can do it? No, I'm going to go and take a child's pose now, or I'm going to take the option which is a little bit less intense than kind of option further along that the teacher's cueing. because you realize how much your ego comes up in class, and actually that's supposed to happen. So it's, come through whatever door you come through. You might be doing breath work, you might be into meditation, you might be into yoga asana, or which is known as yoga, but the asana or asana, the postures, the poses, what we generally know as yoga. Come through any door, but then try and open your eyes up to go to deepen your practice, and you'll just get so much more out of it. And the healing journey will either continue for you or it will re-begin.
Yes. And I see this pattern with women, especially where we use workouts to punish ourselves. And I know that yoga isn't really supposed to be a workout, and that's what your decolonizing work is partially about. But here in the West, it can really be that. And I find that people injure themselves and they don't listen to the voice of their soul or their heart or even what their physical body's limits are. And they take it too far. And then they're like, I never want to do yoga again. But that's not really yoga. That's like some sort of masochistic experience of self-loathing where you're just trying to force yourself to attain a certain body weight or something. And so it's really sad to me too when I see women, but anyone, like in the grips of listening to their inner villain voice and this sort of internalized idea of beauty standards, and then letting that poison what could be such a beautiful spiritual practice. But again, as on the mat, so outside of the mat. So it's like showing where we might push or punish or try to control ourselves outside too.
I think also it's about letting go of control, because we don't know what's going to happen in the next moment, but we convinced ourselves in this life that we do. And it doesn't make any sense because it's all unknown and it's all projected from the past of what we think is going to happen. But really it is all unknown. And so we need to let go of this idea of control. Control of what? You can put your best effort in, you can be of service as much as you can, but we can't control the outcome of anything. And I also think the problem is we live in a world that is very much focused on your productivity and your output. And so if in a yoga class, the teacher's saying one thing, like take another vinyasa or stay in downward facing dog for a little bit longer, or you can go into a resting pose if you prefer. You think in your mind at the time, I need to be doing. And so I need to take another one because the teacher's told me that. And I need to stay in this pose for a bit longer. And we're not very good at knowing when to listen internally, because most of us are in this world where we're pulled away from that and we're pulled apart from that. So if you feel like that naturally in your yoga practice, you're still doing that, know that it's a safe space and it's an opportunity to allow yourself to rest. And there's so much productivity in rest. If you do not rest, you will burn out and you will no longer be productive or efficient. If your mind is busier, you cannot be as focused as you think you're being. You need to make sure that you prioritize rest in order to be productive and not see rest as something that is negative or bad, and therefore allow yourself to rest and melt into the shavasana, the pose where you lie on your back at the end of the class. But I say this from someone who was absolutely, one, a skeptic, and two, very, very busy in the mind. And, naturally I am. And that's why yoga is such a huge thing for me. But I do remember in my early days of practicing yoga, I would get so bored towards the end of the class when it slowed down. And I remember in my mind thinking, when is the teacher going to finish? Because I've got to get back to my to-do list. And I didn't know at the time how ironic that was, because you've got nothing to do other than just to lie in the pose. You've got to ask yourself, why can't I give myself that? Why can I not give myself permission? Am I not worthy of rest? Am I not worthy of taking a break? And I think the answer to that, at that point, I didn't think I was. I thought that everything was about my output, how much I socialized. Everything was just so surface level, but I didn't think it was at the time. But I look back to that girl and I think, thank God that you stayed with the practice of yoga and you committed, because now I know that I'm worthy to give myself the gift of relaxation. And that means that I don't fill my diary full of social plans that tire me out if I'm busy every single weekend for the next 3-4 months. That was the kind of life I led. And I'm so glad, because the practice of yoga has enabled me to just look after myself in all aspects of my life a lot more, and prioritize myself. Because who else is going to do that? You've got to do it for yourself.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. I used to like only want to go to like high power vinyasa flow classes. And as soon as it slowed down, same thing. I was like, okay, like the point of this is done. And if you are resisting the slower poses, I think then yoga is 1,000,000% for you and what you need. It's like when they say, if you can't find 5 minutes to meditate, you need to take an hour.
If you can't find time for it, it means that you need to do it. And if you don't think it's for you, then question why you don't think it's for you. Because usually it's a thought pattern. It's you saw someone go and you thought that they were a hippie and you don't identify with being a hippie. Or you think it's really like spiritual and woo woo and you just don't align with that. But why? What's your thought pattern around that? And just allow yourself to be introspective and curious.
It's funny because I feel like you guys in the UK might have a different perception of yoga than us here because we don't necessarily see yoga as like spiritual and woo woo out here. Maybe I'm just in LA and it's a different spiritual consciousness than a lot of other places, but I feel like out here it's more lost its way in terms of it needing to be a really intense workout, in my opinion. It's like the pendulum is kind of on the other end. I think the studios that do treat it with more reverence and like a spiritual practice seem to be the ones doing the best from what I see out here. So that's really interesting hearing your perspective in London.
Definitely. I think the Brits are a little bit different. We're a little bit more cautious of what is this Eastern wisdom? What is this? And it's similar though. It's similar that all the classes and studios are going to be more workout focused. But I know that, yeah, I know that I have a lot of my community are based over in the States. And I think that people in America tend to be a bit more open to spiritual consciousness, like you said, and just being aware of actually the roots of yoga and what yoga is about and trying to respect the history and culture a bit more, which is really good. That's really lovely.
Yeah, for sure. So, living in these times of a lot of intensity on Earth, what do you recommend for people in terms of like breath work or regulating restorative poses? Like for the average person that is just watching the news right now, feels so freaked out about what the future holds, is feeling a little bit burnt out, like where can they use this beautiful tool? Where can they start?
So two things I would say that's super accessible for everyone. The first is a breathing technique. It literally translates as the Black Indian buzzing bee, or it's known as Brahmari Pranayam. So pranayam is the breathing technique or ways to alter the prana, the life force, the vital energy. But basically Brahmari is the first word, and that is that Black Indian buzzing bee. And the easiest way to remember it is all you're doing is humming. So you're breathing in through your nose and you're breathing out as a hum. So two things to note. It doesn't matter how long you hum for. So this is going to massively depend on your lung capacity. I will hum for a longer or a shorter period of time compared to you. That's absolutely fine. And the second thing is the pitch. So the hum doesn't need to be a particular sound. A low vibrational sound can feel a little bit more calming for people, but you will hum in the way that you naturally do, and that's absolutely fine. Because it's just using your mouth and your nose to do the humming. The best thing about this is you can do it. Say if you're on public transport and you suddenly feel a little pang of anxiety, or you struggling to go to bed and you're trying to relax the nervous system and calm everything down. You know, when you go to bed and suddenly your to-do list comes up and you think, I didn't message that person back. Let me get my phone. And which is the worst idea. Don't put your phone anywhere in your room because you will just be on there for hours. But this is the perfect thing to do. So it's an inhale like this. And whenever you're ready to take the next breath in, you take the breath in through the nose and you continue. So that humming bee breath is perfect. If you have children, it's also great to do with kids because it's quite a fun one. And it just is a real resetter. The other amazing thing about it is it means that you create 15 times the amount of nitric oxide what you usually create when you're breathing through your nose. And nitric oxide is something the body naturally makes, and it's really good for vasodilation. So improving the circulation in the body and lowering high blood pressure. So if you're someone that has high blood pressure, feel stressed, you feel agitated, it's just going to bring everything back down. Similarly, those ugly emotions like the anger, the jealousy, anything that creates this heat, it's just going to balance you, ground you, and bring you back down. So that's a really good one to do. And the second one is to use a mudra. So a mudra is basically a gesture or a seal, and our thumbs and our fingers are representative of the 5 different elements. So when we create a connection between the thumb and the finger, for example, the other 3 fingers together, we're creating an energetic shift and a balancing within our bodies. So this is Varun Mudra, which literally, it's also known as Jal Mudra, and it literally means the water mudra. So it's the element to connect you with the water. So if you're feeling, you feel a bit stuck and there's a lack of fluidity in your life, this is a really nice one to do. So thumb and the pinky finger touch. If you're a regular meditator, you just add this to your meditation. So nothing different is happening. You're just adding this in. Feel the connection between the 2 fingers in contact. Otherwise, same thing, public transport. If you're in a meeting, just hold your hands under your desk and no one's going to notice. So they're really, really easy things that anyone can do. In terms of yoga poses, if we get our forehead towards the ground, there's this instant calming effect. So if you do something like child's pose, even if your head can't touch the ground, use a rolled up blanket, a cushion, a block, anything you have at home that's going to help get the head resting on something. And in that fold position, similarly, the extending your legs in front of you and coming into a forward fold, Paschimottanasana, that forward fold position, anything where you're basically arching and you're doming and you're rounding, almost like you're giving yourself a nice hug, and then resting that forehead on something is also going to make you cool down and calm down.
Those are such great tips. And that's so interesting about each finger representing another element. Can you tell us which finger represents which element?
Yeah, so the thumb is fire. The pinky finger is water. So that is a nice way to remember. It's the fire and water when you're doing the water mudra. The ring finger is earth. So think about it that when you get married, if you get married, you have your wedding finger on the ring finger, and hopefully you're in a loving relationship that makes you feel grounded. So that's connecting you to earth. And then the first finger and the second finger, I'm going to remember, I need to double check this, but air and space. So air and space, one of the 2 of them. I don't remember the which way round. Those are the middle 2. And in Ayurveda, which is the sister science of yoga, the elements come up so much. So believe that we are made up of the 5 elements. And I think we can feel that, when we have that feeling of anger or any kind of emotion that creates fire, you can really feel that heat within your body. And that is the element of fire. We know that we're made up of water. There's a big percentage of us that's made up of water. So yeah, it's just reshifting the elements, balancing the doshas, the different qualities and characteristics that make us up, and finding a bit more grounding.
Yes, I really would love to have you back to do a whole Ayurveda part 2, because I'm super interested in Ayurveda, and I know that I myself am very Vata.
And probably a bit of Pitta as well, if you were really into like the fiery dynamic practices and you have a bit of fire in you anyway. What's really interesting about the doshas is that you might be a particular dosha, but when you're out of balance, it might be a different dosha that's out of balance, because actually we're made up of all 3. But yeah, we should definitely do a whole session on Ayurveda because there's so much to unpack.
I would love that. So I want to tell you about a really profound experience I had one time in a yoga practice. So I was in, I think, a pretty gnarly vinyasa flow. And this was a time where I was a little bit further into my practice. So I wasn't like drilling myself into the ground. I was just observing things. I was in flow and I was enjoying the practice. I was probably like sobbing. I really do cry every yoga practice. It's so weird. I got into Shavasana, and I got this message because I also feel like yoga opens me up, like you said in the beginning too, where I just get these knowings in yoga, or my subconscious. Yoga kind of puts your body on automatic pilot when you plug into it. And there's like almost this openness that it creates for more intuitive spiritual information to come through. And I got this really beautiful message about how the yoga practice into Shavasana is a perfect metaphor for life into death, and how like the more you push yourself in life out of your comfort zone and try things, the more just ready for that rest you are. And it's not that your soul ends or your consciousness ends. I don't really believe in death. I think it's just a transformation into another form. Like your consciousness is still there in Shavasana, you're just not moving anymore. You found stillness, and the level of reward in that, to me, feels very parallel to the way that we pushed ourselves in the earlier part of our practice. Like when you don't push yourself or get what you needed to get out of that yoga flow, you're not really ready to lay down yet. You're kind of like, oh, there's more I wanted to get out of that. But when you really put everything into life or your flow in this part of the metaphor, you're ready for that shavasana. It's like a welcome rest, like letting out a sigh. And that just felt so comforting to me.
I love that. And you would have loved my last retreat because we focused on a concept that's known as the panchakleshas, which are the 5 mental afflictions, also known as the 5 sufferings of the mind. And they're basically 5 things that if we know how to overcome them, we just live a much easier and happier life. And they're 5 things that really hold us back. And the last one is known as abhinivisha, and it means fear of death. And so on my last retreat, I got everyone lying down in shavasana, and basically it was, you're going to meditate. You are dead. Like that's what's happening here. And it got people to just meditate on the concept of death and just lie there and just allow their bodies to surrender. And that's it. This is it now. And it was such a profound experience for them because, like you said, there's just this surrender and acceptance, which so often we don't do. And we are so scared of death in Western civilization as well. There are many cultures that honor death very differently to the way that we do. But if there's a fear or a sense of clinging to life, it holds us back. And absolutely, that transition to shavasana is a closing off of the practice and the ability to release and let it all go. And it's amazing that you made that connection when you were going through that flow. And I think crying as well, it's just like laughing. It's just a form of release. I hear a lot of people as well that, especially when I'm doing a throat opening pose, like a back bend, or even just lying down on the back, but using blocks to support the back of the spine and the head. So it's a bit more heart opening and the throat feels a little bit more open. People will cough a lot and they'll say, I don't know why I was coughing. And I've led enough retreats and classes to know that is an opening of the throat. And it's a blockage of the throat element of the throat chakra. And there's something that's trying to release out of you. And crying is exactly the same. It's just a release. And it's just something that was in your body that needed to come out. And you welcome that and honor that, which is so beautiful. It's so important.
Yes. Oh, that's so cool. And so, for people who feel like they're stuck in their head a lot and kind of need a release of the mental realms, what's a good type of pose for that?
Do you know what I always say with the yoga poses is that it's not what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. So it doesn't so much matter whether you're doing an energetic dynamic pose like a warrior 2, Virabhadrasana 2. So you're in a standing position, your legs are really nice and wide, the top foot is pointing forward, the back foot is at a slight angle, there's a deep bend in your front knee and your arms are open and really strong. It's a very active pose. It doesn't matter if you're doing that or if you're lying in shavasana, because what's happening in the mind is what's the most important. So that's what the main focus should be, because you can achieve this greater mental clarity and a deeper sense of connection intuitively within you in any pose, in the same way that you can in any way that you're living your life, in any situation in life, in every relationship, any relationship. You can change it based on what's going on within your own self. So I don't think there's any one which pose is better than others, but I think tuning into, like you said earlier, you're observing. So you observe and you're aware of what's going on. And as long as we have that observation when we're in whichever pose we're in, then we can achieve the goal that we want to achieve mentally.
Yes, absolutely. So I know that a lot of people hold a lot of stored emotion in their hips. I feel like hip opening in particular is where a lot of people carry things. And I know pigeon pose and lizard pose, I don't know the proper names for them. I just know them as their English counterparts. Those can be so powerful. And I think in these collective times where we're holding on to so much, giving our body the opportunity, because our body holds everything. I heard somebody say on this podcast one time, and I can't remember who, but they said, we know when we experience trauma that we can't hold on to cognitively, that our brain pushes it to the back. But what people don't know is that the back equals our physical body. And so I think that giving ourselves the gift of wringing out the sponge, especially through, I feel like since 2020 to now, it's been such heightened energetic times on earth, and giving ourselves a practice to just not judge it, but just let our body do what it needs to do and cry and feel and even sweat. All of that just feels so powerful too, even if the mind doesn't believe in it or understand it and it wants to judge it. It's like, let the mind do its thing, but just give your body the chance to wring out that sponge and you'll feel so much better.
And also thinking about moving the prana energetically up and down the length of the spine is something that we don't focus on too much, but anybody can do it. You can do it lying in bed, you can do it on public transport, sitting on your sofa, or on your yoga mat in a class. And the prana being the life force energy, just visualization is so powerful. And it's got so much research to back it up. It's what a lot of sports people do. And they visualize themselves achieving a goal. You visualize yourself doing a talk before you do the talk. You're going to feel more confident doing the talk because your brain thinks it's done it in a way. So that it's actually an ancient practice known as bhavana. And this visualization of breathing, feeling the breath come in, but breathing it all the way up to the top and all the way down to the bottom. That's how you can also shift energetically. But you're completely right. We saw so much trauma in the body. Hip opening will always bring the most crying to my class, which I love. By the way, if anyone cries in class, I'm always like, I've done a good job, because you feel safe enough to be able to open and you know that the practice is really about that release and not about holding it within you. But yeah, pigeon pose, lizard pose, not only is it opening up whatever's feeling there emotionally and physically, but it also, what people don't realize is that lower back pain, a huge reason for lower back pain is actually having tight hips. So if your hip flexors are tight, it's going to impact. You think your hips are like a hinge of the body. They're such a key part of the body. So when you start to open up, yes, you process things emotionally, but you also end up alleviating some of that lower back pain. I think you're right. We're in a bit of a crazy time, but we're also in a society that's becoming increasingly sedentary. So we sit down a lot. You sit down at your desk for work, and then you come home and you probably sit down because you're so tired from your job at work. Generally speaking, not everyone has seated jobs, but many people do. So that's another way that you can alleviate your lower back pain, because if you're seated a lot of the day, you naturally are going to have lower back pain or just general hip tightness or just general fatigue in the body, because it's not moved in the way. We're animals. So we're supposed to move. We're supposed to flow. We're supposed to move in that same dynamic, which unfortunately many of us are not really doing at the moment. But even something as simple as be sat on your sofa and do a few rolls in your shoulders backwards and then to the front, take a few twists and circles in your wrists, do the same in your ankles, little movements that actually don't require you to find a yoga mat and roll it out and think that I've got to do it in an hour, otherwise it's not the full practice. Incorporate little things that you can do, because that's how it becomes more accessible for you as well. And then you'll actually will practice the yoga more regularly.
Yes, I love that. I wanted to ask you really quickly, what is your opinion on hot yoga?
I've practiced hot yoga before and loved it in the winter because it's very cold in London, and I loved going into hot yoga. I also really love the sequence of the set postures. I haven't practiced it in a long time, not because I don't like it, but just because in terms of geographically, there isn't a hot yoga studio near me that I would go to. I think it can be dangerous if you don't know what you're getting yourself in for. Hopefully the studio that you go to is really educated you on what to do. But when I would practice religiously my hot yoga, I would go in with a bottle of coconut water, and I would have coconut water that day. And I would also make sure that I was extra hydrated that day before I went into class, because it gets super hot. You get super sweaty. And if you go into it without being fully hydrated, then you're kind of in trouble. You're going to feel faint. You're going to feel like you're going to pass out at the end of class or during. It's one of the many different forms of the practice of yoga. It's stemmed off the back of more of an Ashtanga, kind of quite a challenging style. I know that a lot of places now call what was Bikram yoga hot yoga. So for people who don't know, Bikram Chowdhury was an Indian yoga teacher who was not a very good guy, and there was a lot of abuse that happened. And so his technique was 26 yoga poses done in a particular order in the heat. And it's also often known as hot yoga. So I don't think that he was so associated with it, but there have been documentaries that have shown that he didn't actually create that sequence. It was actually a different guru in India who had created that sequence. And I think that sequence is incredibly powerful. So just because it's associated with someone, it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it if you're someone that practices and you find it beneficial. And if I had the chance to go to hot yoga, I definitely would.
Is that the Ashtanga sequence that you're talking about?
No, it's called something else, but I don't remember the name, but it is just 26 set poses. And there are a lot of poses that you will also find in Ashtanga because it kind of comes from that lineage.
Okay, got it. That's so interesting. Yeah. I was wondering because I like hot yoga, but I just feel like I'm in a season of my life where I'm being so gentle on myself and my body, and it's not resonating with me anymore. I want yin yoga, I want gentle, I want stretching, I want breathing. And I'm actually kind of relieved that hot yoga isn't resonating with me anymore because it was like really intense. And sometimes I would leave and be like tired and depleted for the rest of the day. And I would drink electrolytes in my water and I just think that my body was speaking to me and be like, this is too much. And I think that's where people can sometimes conflate yoga with intense exercise and be really turned off by it and then miss a lot of the benefits. Because, by the way, hot yoga has served me so well for so long in my life, and I'm sure I'll find my way back to it. I'm just in a chapter where I'm being very like delicate with myself, but I don't want people to think like yoga has to equal any type of physical output. It's more about just like the breath, the observing yourself, the patience with yourself on your mat, the presence, the level of physical difficulty is up to what your body resonates with. Is that right?
Totally. And as women as well, we are going through our cycle. And so therefore there are some days where you don't want to be doing hot yoga. So be aware of that. There are days where you will be of an increased body temperature and there'll already be heat in the body. So adding more heat onto that by doing a practice like hot yoga might feel too much or too intense for you. Only you're going to know that within yourself. And it's your experience with hot yoga is very similar to my experience with, I used to do a lot of spinning. So on cycling on the exercise bike, it was the only exercise I would do would be spinning at a class at the gym, which was called cardio combat, which as you can imagine was basically all cardio and just like boxing moves. And it was an hour of pure that. And I had this mindset that if I'm not sweating, absolutely drenched in sweat, I'm not exercising. I actually feel like I held on to body fat in certain areas when I was exercising in that intense way because it probably wasn't so good for me. I was so depleted energetically. I wasn't fueling myself properly. And, it really did borderline on being a disorder. I think it absolutely was a disorder. And I realize now when I look back at that time in my life that I definitely wanted control because I was out of control in other situations. But now I do a lot less intense exercise and I feel like my body looks stronger. It shouldn't be what it's about and it's not what it looks like. That's not what it should be about. However, I do find it really interesting that I've got more abs now than I had when I was doing like so many crunches in the gym and really, you actually said it earlier, like punishing myself to have to work out this way. And I think we sometimes actually when we scale it back, I do Pilates, yoga, and I do a lot of walking. And also when I walk, I'm walking with my baby and he's 10 kilograms. So I walk with a 10-kilogram weighted vest. So it's like a weighted workout, a weighted walk, but we underestimate things like the simple, slower practices. You can absolutely still get fit and healthy and strong and also achieve goal. If you have goals of you want to look a particular way, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think sometimes we get so attached to that. So it's interesting. I had a similar revelation that you had as well.
I couldn't agree more. And I feel like it goes to this idea of hustle culture and how we've internalized capitalism and hustle culture, and how we were talking about how hard it is for us to let ourselves rest because it's so deeply ingrained that everything has to be hard if it's worth it. And I think that's something that we are unlearning and that our yoga practice can help us unlearn, and our just workout overall can help us unlearn, because just like you, I was addicted to exercise. I think it's probably a Sagittarius thing. I was like addicted to running for a while. I did cardio, kickboxing like you. It's like torture. Like I'm not meant to be like that. I was breaking out. My periods were horrible. I was like gaining weight. I was also eating way more than I normally would because I was working out so hard. Like my body was in complete distress mode. And I wasn't honoring my body. I was honoring what my mind thought I should be doing. And that's completely different. And so I feel like this idea of people say, oh, I knew that I was really healed because I stopped hustling and I stopped trying to reach a certain level to feel safe. Like I already felt safe where I am now. And I feel like that is exemplified by that workout pattern, but also in our career and our businesses. It's like we push ourselves, we hustle, and our bodies break down. And I think getting to a place where I'm just like you, I do yoga, Pilates, and walking. And sometimes, like lately, I've just been walking like 7,000 to 8,000 steps a day, and I'm good. And I feel like it's reflective of such a healed acceptance place that I've reached within myself, where I'm not trying to like grasp or fix myself or change myself or even be better. I'm just listening to myself and loving myself. And that's been such a beautiful shift. And I definitely think yoga has helped me find that too.
That's so beautiful. And it's so inspiring as well that you give yourself the grace, because the old you would be thinking, you've only walked this week, you've not done any exercise. And it's like, where is this need? Can we just allow ourselves to be, and actually to be how you think about our ancestors? They weren't going to the gym. They were out in nature, because I imagine you're going for walks in nature. So you're spending time outside, you're getting fresh air, you're getting daylight on your skin. All of these things are incredibly healing. All of these things are very beneficial. And so I think just scaling it back is so important, but it takes a while to get there. So if anyone feels stuck, it is a process and it's a journey. But when you get there, it's so wonderful, because don't you feel sometimes that you just spoil yourself in the best way? Like I'll book myself a massage and the old me would be like, I don't really need that. Or like, oh, should I spend that money on that? And now it's like, one thing that I know is I'm the main character of my life, and everyone else, it gets to experience me. And I get to decide how to be for them to experience the best version of me. So if I'm just burnt out and exhausted, and then they're not going to get the best version of me, and neither is my mind going to be running in the best way. So I feel now like I treat myself, but really I just listen to myself more, and I just had a life where I didn't at all. But it just feels like a nice treat. Like when I'm able to do these things for myself, it just feels nice when I'm kind to myself, because I haven't been for so long. And I think probably lots of people can resonate with that, especially being a woman. I think it's the story for so many of us. Certainly when I speak to my girlfriends, it's a similar story. You know, you got to hustle, you got to work hard, and then the time for rest is just put to one side.
Absolutely. And I think that that's just a beautiful example of deeply loving yourself. And when we really love ourselves, then we set the example for how we want to be loved by other people, how the universe can love us. So it all starts with self love. And I think that the last thing I want to say is I just feel like there's this pattern in female spaces where we always feel like we have to improve ourselves or be better in some way or change ourselves. We're constantly trying to digest content that will help us achieve more, grow more, be better, be this, be that. And I just feel like there's such like circling back to that idea of just meeting yourself on your mat. Can you just love yourself with exactly where you are right now, because you deserve it? And yoga will bring to the forefront exactly what needs to be detangled so you can actually authentically feel how deserving you are of it.
And that's it. Yoga is not going to create any weird emotions in you. Yoga just brings to the surface that which already lives within you, that was actually calling out to be addressed. And I always say that to my students, you know, if you have an emotion or a feeling that comes up, it's not just suddenly come out of nowhere. It's no one's made it up. It's been in you for a while. So allow yourself to address it and go from there, and then just see what happens. Be curious.
I love that so much. I could talk to you forever, Angie, and I hope to have you back maybe next season to talk about some Ayurveda wellness things. I think that'd be so fun. But for now, where can the community find you and work with you and follow you, all the things?
I know, likewise. So you definitely have to let me know when you're next in London, and I'll let you know if I'm ever in LA, so we can meet up and just chat and go for a walk and do yoga and do Pilates. Everyone can find me on Tiwari Yoga. So my surname is Tiwari. So Tiwari Yoga for Instagram, TikTok. The website is tiwariyoga.com. For anyone who wants to come on retreats, you'll find all the information on there. And then I also run an Unearthed online yoga studio. So Unearthed is the name of the brand. We've got over 400 classes, and it really is giving you yoga on the mat and off the mat. So philosophy classes, meditation, breathwork, chanting mantras, mudras, and also your yoga flows that you can expect. And then for anyone who wants to be a yoga teacher, or a yoga teacher who wants to deepen their practice, I also do a 50-hour yoga teacher training, which is called Rooted in Respect, On every single person that joins, we will fund an underprivileged girl in India to go to school for an entire year. So we've just sent 10 girls to India, and we've just launched for cohort 2. So if anyone who wants to join that, it is also all online for 50 hours. So if you're based in the States, you will still absolutely be able to join. We have people that were based in America that joined us on cohort 1. And also reach out, email me, DM me. I always love to hear from people. It's not weird if you listen to this podcast and anything resonated, just get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you.
I love that. And I know we have a lot of hummingbirds in London too. So if you are a hummingbird in the London area, that's a perfect opportunity to connect with you. Well, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. This has been such a magical conversation and I'm so inspired by it. So thank you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Before we go into Sitting with Spirit, I want to tell you about Virgo Season Earth Angel Club. The theme this month is Eclipse Season Harmony with Archangel Michael, and it's going to be such a powerful one. If you're not aware of Earth Angel Club, it is a monthly gathering of people all around the world where I do an astrology breakdown for the current zodiac season, an energy reading for the group, a guided angelic meditation. This one is really going to focus on soul growth and flow through eclipse season and attuning our energy to be ready to flow and receive. It's going to be super powerful. One of the benefits of Earth Angel Club is getting to skip the wait list and get a reading with me sooner. People love Earth Angel Club. It's like serious self-care for the soul. And if you've been feeling a little crunchy, I highly recommend it to shift the vibe tremendously. I also give ritual guidance for the zodiac season that we're in and so much more. You'll get the replay link so you can re-listen to it as many times as you'd like, do the guided meditation as many times as you'd like. You can sign up on angelsandamethyst.com and code EARLY will give you $11 off until September 1st. Virgo Season Earth Angel Club is Thursday, September 4th at 6 p.m. Pacific. But if you can't make it live, you always get the replay link. I can't wait to connect with you there. Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, my loves, the part of the podcast where I sit with our angels, guides, ancestors, and give the message for the collective. Take what resonates, leave the rest. And whenever you're finding this episode, even if it isn't the week that it originally came out, you were still meant to hear these messages in this time because time is not linear in the spirit world. Getting into the first message this week, I have a couple different overall feelings and downloads that I've been getting for the collective, and then I'll get into the energy reading of the week specifically. But the first energy message is do not mistake discomfort for intuition. I feel like a lot of people are in these up-level times of transition and unknown and liminal space. And sometimes it's really uncomfortable up-leveling. Sometimes we think that flow is the same thing as everything always being easy. And that's not exactly true. Sometimes flow has an element of clunkiness and tenderness and discomfort. And even on a nervous system regulation level, sometimes engaging in healthier behaviors, relating to people and situations and dynamics in new healed ways is extremely uncomfortable. And sometimes we can take that discomfort and be like, is this my intuition telling me that I'm on the wrong path? And we start to doubt ourselves and we start to regress or get confused about our progress. But I think there's just this message here that if you're in a moment of discomfort, not letting your mind create the story that you're not supported or your intuition isn't connecting. I think re-listen to the intuitive development episodes 223 and 224, and really get to the deeper, still waters below the discomfort. On the other side of the block, the stuckness, the discomfort is something we've been avoiding, something that we don't want to look at, something that's a little bit too painful. And as we were talking about in the intuitive development series, if you haven't listened, check those out. Self-divination is an inward spiral, not an outward seeking. So when the discomfort comes up as a messenger, it's an invitation to get still with yourself and to look at the unhealed parts that feel uncomfortable in the unknown and the liminal space. But the message very strongly this week is do not mistake that for an intuitive download that you're not on the right path. So the next interesting message that I got came through in a reading, but it was a personal message. So when you're a professional reader, but probably in any professional space, we all want to do a good job. It's just a natural part of doing work that you love and caring about your clients. And so that wanting to do a good job can put you in the energy of controlling and forcing. And if you've been here long enough, you know, I always say flow, don't force, allow, don't force. And so I've been really working personally with triggers on my own healing journey about letting go of control. And of course, it's always like a deeper spiral. There's always another level to go. But letting go of control of how other people show up has been so freeing for me. And I do feel like I've made so much progress on my journey with that. And I've noticed that it's improved my readings because in the past, I would be in control from a place of wanting to do a good job. I would be trying to like steer the reading in one direction or really looking for one certain thing that my mind felt would make the reading amazing. And to be honest, this is kind of back when I was a little bit less developed. But even now, I've reached a deeper layer of trust. And the message that I got is that trust is the inverse frequency of control. And trust is what it takes to listen to your intuition, to be a reader, and to get intuitive messages. And when we are trying to control everything in our external life outside of our intuitive practices, it bleeds into our ability to trust and surrender and receive in the container of our intuitive practices. So our self-development and spiritual development and intuitive development all go hand in hand. And that connection to control will block you from ever connecting with your intuition to the fullest potential because it's impossible to be in trust and control at the same time. And so I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people are questioning their intuition right now or questioning how supported they are or feeling disconnected from their intuition through times of liminal space, because you can't be an intuitive connection and control at the same time, because intuitive connection at its deepest level is trust. Trusting what's coming through, trusting the timing, trusting that the messages that need to be received are. And 9 times out of 10 in my readings, you guys are getting these messages that I couldn't have known, but you know. And literally today, I was like, your angels are showing me you being a dancer as a kid and them wanting you to go back to dance classes. And she was like, for the last 2 months, I've been getting the intuitive hit that I need to go back to dance classes. And so that's something I couldn't have known, but you know. And that's what I mean, trusting that instead of thinking my intuitive message should be an answer about XYZ. It should look like this. It should give me this type of feeling. It should come in this type of way. That's control. So it was really awesome today to just really record the yardstick of how far I've come in my ability to let go of control and just truly trust whatever's coming through. Trusting the flow of energy, trusting that whatever the questions being asked were exactly what needed to be. It's just, it opens up your channel in such a deep, powerful way. And the last sort of big picture message that I want to give is obviously with social media, we see the dysfunction and the pain and the wounding in the world in a new way than previous generations ever did. We see suffering of people all around the world. And while it's very important to care, and while it's very important to not disconnect from your humanity, to stay connected to the righteous anger and the chivalrous desire to make sure everybody has basic human decency and rights, there's also a little sneaky energetic layer that I want to call out. And for a lot of us, seeing the dysfunction in the world, not only does it dysregulate our nervous system for obvious reasons, because we are not meant to be callous and numb to human suffering. And of course, it means we're connected to our heart and our spirit to care. But there's another facet of this. And this is why sometimes energy is hard to pinpoint because it's always very layered. And there's a layer here that I want to put words to, which is seeing the dysfunction in the world from the nervous system state of feeling like you have to be a fixer or to fix everything, to be the one that listens to people's problems and makes it better is extremely dysregulating. So the people pleaser, the fixer, the oldest daughter syndrome, all of that is getting extra triggered. And that's where it's not helpful. It's helpful to get the message energetically that things have to change and making active, creative change in ways that are sustainable. But just sitting in that nervous system dysregulation of the world's problems are so big, how do I personally fix it? From the survival mode protector place of, again, being that people pleaser, fixer, oldest daughter vibes. That's what we need to call out and recognize in ourself so that we don't disconnect, burn out, have unrealistic expectations, and that we can keep our activism sustainable. So going into the energy for the week, I felt a lot, and I know I'm a broken record with this, but it's just the sign of the times. A lot of self-doubt, a lot of unknown energy, a lot of crown chakra blocks. It feels, again, like the energy is very layered and that a lot of people are kind of going through big existential questions and intensity. And just a lot of people seem to be going through it as I tune into this. And the first symbol I saw was snail as an animal guide. And snail is so tied to like slowing down, taking your time, trusting the timing, being okay with the timing, doing less. And talk about nervous system dysregulation. It has taken me a long time to teach my body that it's safe to be in spaciousness. And a lot of us are actively working on that. And snail comes through as a really supportive animal guide for that. The next animal guide that came through is swan. And swan is the animal guide connected to late bloomer energy. It's interestingly sort of tied to the energetic themes of trusting the timing, late bloomer energy, trusting the pacing of things. But it's a transformative animal guide. And it's like coming into our most beautiful, graceful version of self yet. And so there's something here, again, with that late bloomer, transformative, trusting the timing, like best chapter is yet to come type energy. And then I got this feeling. So I got my symbol for career and I felt throat constriction. And I felt like some of that kind of crown chakra stuff was tied to career that I was talking about earlier, like the liminal space and the in between. And I felt this throat chakra constriction and throat chakra themes coming up around career. Like, where do you need to be really honest with yourself? Where do you need to use your voice in a different way? Where do you need to check in with what career is triggering for your inner child? Feels like there's deeper truth and expression, both to others and self within career, that's asking to be checked in with this week. And so I decided to pull a card around this and I pulled the Page of Cups, which is really interesting because it's like the messenger of the water element. So deeper intuition and emotional feelings and check in. But there's also like a beauty to this card that is a really beautiful layer where it's like fun and magic and inner child expansion. And as I pulled this card, I got the feeling of taking how far you've come, all the healing you've done on yourself, all the spiritual growth, and integrating it into your career field in a way that really celebrates how far you've come. And so it feels like there's space for more magic and alignment and witchiness and power and full voiced expression and up level in career based off of all of the work that we've been doing on ourselves. And that feels really exciting. And it feels like there's something too about pleasing your inner child, again, checking in with your inner child and making sure they're having fun and sort of seeing where there's some inner child stuff that might be coming up around career as well. And sometimes when you pull the Page of Cups, there can be good news or new opportunities or expansion in career. So feels like there's a lot of wiggle room in this topic. And it all starts with the throat chakra. And when you get in tune with that messaging, there might be more room for play, expansion, inner child connection, new opportunities. So yeah, those were the angel messages for the week. Now we'll get into the mediumship. So when I started to connect with this person in the spirit world, I just started feeling so nauseous and like all of these digestive problems. And for a minute, I was like, is this actually me? Like, am I going to be sick? But then how to know it's spirit is that as soon as you get the message, it stops. So I was like, okay, no, this is actually her, because as soon as I took a step back and disconnected from the link a little bit, it went away. So I felt this extreme sense of nausea. I felt like I was connected to a younger woman in her early 20s. She felt extremely hard on herself. I heard the name Jean and felt like there would be a J name connected to her, or the name Jean. I feel like while she was here, she only focused on her flaws. She lived in this place of like constant refinement, constant being hard on herself. I saw a connection to horses with her, and I also saw ballet. And it just felt like her world was so small, because kind of goes back to that message earlier about control and trust cannot live simultaneously. We're either co-creating with the universe from a place of trust, or we're keeping ourselves stuck and blocked from the dead end frequency of control. And so there's this interesting message I got from this spirit person. And I really felt like there was a lot of body image stuff with her too. Like, I think a lot of the nausea was tied to that, and just this sense of trying to control her body and only show up a certain way. And it just felt very heavy and very hard. She had a few messages. The first is, you can't let yourself be truly loved if you don't let yourself be truly seen. And there's just this feeling of her fitting into a mold of what she thought she had to be loved. And because of that, she was never truly loved. And it all starts with loving ourselves enough to be our full selves, to show our full selves, to show our vulnerability, to show our messiness, to show our weak spots, to even show the things that we're ashamed of. And it just felt like there was this sense of all she wanted in life was this love and connection. And she understood when she transitioned to spirit that by her not allowing herself to be seen in her full, messy, authentic beauty, she only attracted people that wanted to keep her small, or sort of co-created with that wounded part of her consciousness. So it all really does start with loving ourselves enough. And we all do it. And I remember when I was in the dating world and I was so afraid to share my full self. And it's like, yeah, I'm an angelic intuitive. At the time, I was vegan, gluten-free, didn't eat grains or sugar or corn or soy. I've lightened a lot up on that. But when I was in my chronic illness flares, I had all these dietary restrictions. I have very strong spiritual beliefs. It's like, yeah, I was not sure. And my inner villain voice was like, who is going to love you? Like, you have all these health problems and you have a strange career and you don't know if you want kids. Like, there were so many things that my inner villain voice was popping off on that, yeah, it would have been easy for me to hide parts of myself, to downplay parts of myself, especially because when I was in that dating world, it was before Angels and Amethyst took off. Angels and Amethyst really took off in 2022. And I started going full time, I think, in 2021. So it's interesting. But you know what? I went on a deep 3-year journey of being single and learned to love myself, and actually fell in love with my life. And I was like, a partner will just be an added bonus to this, if anything. And I was my full self. And that's what made Ari fall in love with me. He actually loves what I do, and it brings a lot of magic to his world. And he's such a nurturing guy that he took my dietary restrictions as like a challenge. Like, how could he make my life epic even with these restrictions? And he just wanted to take care of me. And so that person is out there, but if you don't let them fully see you, they'll never recognize you. And it really starts with us loving ourselves first, just like this beautiful spirit person said. Her other message that she wanted to give is that no matter how dark or hopeless things seem, another sunrise is always around the corner. And I just got this message from her, and it feels like we might be in a time of a lot of collective fear and shadow and darkness and worry. And a lot of people are really going through things. And it's so easy when we're going through things for that inner villain voice to say, this is just life now. Get ready. Like, this is just reality for the rest of our lives. But her beautiful message is that sunrise is just around the corner. Don't forget that. Don't let your inner villain voice talk you into a cage or a hole or make you feel trapped or stuck. It brings me back to this card from the Wisdom of the Hidden Realms, which is the main card deck that I read with, which is Colette Baron Reed. There's an angel in a prison cell looking down at the ground. And that energy of looking down at the ground is that inner villain voice, only focusing on lack and scarcity and trapped and stuck and victimhood and pain. But in that card, the top of the cell has been open the whole time. There's no top, and she has wings. So we have to remember our wings. We have to remember that the top is open and that we can choose to fly out. And I was, of course, just chatting with my aunt last night, and she said, I don't choose to suffer. You know, she and I have both been going through some family stuff, and I was asking her how she was doing, and she's like, yeah, I don't choose suffering. And that's remembering our wings and remembering the top is open. It doesn't mean that there aren't very real hard things that we have to process and work through. But where are we keeping ourselves in a cage by co-creating with those stories past their expiration date? And there's always something beautiful. There's always a new dawn. There's always hope right around the corner. So I'm sending you all so much love. Have a beautiful week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Magic Hour Podcast. We are so happy you're here. I absolutely love to connect with you all on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. I love to get your thoughts on each episode, and I get so excited to get your emails to contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss a new episode in your inbox. We have so many amazing guests right around the corner as always. Please make sure to send your 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to contact@magichourpod.com, and we'll enter you into an angel reading giveaway with me, which is just my favorite thing, to get to connect with the Hummingbird community in that way. You get a bonus entry if you also send a screenshot of your YouTube subscription and also a screenshot of sharing us on your story and tagging us at Magic Hour Podcast on Instagram. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 288 5-star reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We so appreciate you sharing the podcast with other magical people, and it really helps us keep this project alive. To learn more about me, my work, to book a reading with me, take a workshop, please visit angelsandamethyst.com. And remember, you are magic.